The night sky above the alien world was full of fire. Great ships burned as they fell from the heavens, turning the clouds red and black. Towers that once touched the stars were broken, their tops crashing into the streets below. The air smelled of smoke, blood, and ash. High above the ruins, a giant figure stood on a shattered balcony. She was taller than any human building, her skin pale silver like the moon, her hair dark and long, falling like rivers down her back. She was no ordinary alien. She was a noblewoman, born to rule, born to command armies. But tonight, she stood, alone. Her people had left her. Her allies had betrayed her. Her enemies were hunting her. The noblewoman clenched her fists. Even the smallest movement made the stones of the balcony groan under her weight. Her deep voice echoed into the night, though she spoke only to herself. "Too big for me," she whispered. Her glowing eyes looked toward the sky, where enemy warships circled like hungry vultures. "But I'll try." The words were heavy, full of pain, full of defiance. Once, she had been loved. Once, crowds had shouted her name in respect. But when her kingdom fell, when the invaders came, those same people ran. They said she was cursed, that her size was shame, not glory. They left her to die. Now, even her family wanted her gone. The balcony shook. She turned. A hunter drone hovered close, its red eye glowing like a knife in the dark. She swung her arm, smashing it with a single strike. The machine fell to the ground in flames, but she knew more would come. She could not stay here. She moved through the ruins, each step shaking the ground. Broken statues of her ancestors lay scattered, their faces cracked, their crowns buried under dust. The streets were empty, except for the dead. The silence was heavy, too heavy for a world that had once sung with life. Far away, voices whispered. Not the voices of her people, but the voices of strangers, raiders, scavengers. They searched for her, to sell her, to chain her, to laugh at her downfall. The noblewoman pressed herself against the side of a broken wall. She closed her eyes. She listened. Every heartbeat of the strangers was clear to her ears. Every footstep echoed. She could smell the oil of their weapons, the fear in their breath. They did not know she was close. With one step, she crushed the stone beneath her. The sound gave her away. The raiders raised their lights. "There! The giantess! She's still alive!" The noblewoman let out a low growl, deep as thunder. She did not run. She did not hide. With a roar that shook the air, she charged. Her massive hand slammed down, scattering the raiders like insects. Their weapons fired, beams of light cutting the dark, but her thick skin glowed and healed. She smashed, crushed, and hurled them away until only silence remained. But still, she felt no victory. Her strength was not enough. Her size was not enough. Her people had turned away from her. Her enemies wanted her dead. And the galaxy was laughing. She fell to her knees in the ruins, her massive body trembling. Her voice broke the silence. "Why must I fight alone? Why must I carry a world too big for me?" The stars gave no answer. The fire in the sky only grew brighter. But deep in the galaxy, across endless stars, a story was spreading. A rumor, a whisper, about a human, a small one, a fragile one, a human who dared to say he would help the silent giantess. She did not yet know his name. She did not yet see his face. But fate was already moving. In the darkness, as more hunters filled the sky. The noblewoman rose again. Her giant shadow stretched across the ruins, larger than life, larger than hope. She took one long breath, and her eyes burned with fire. If the world was too big for her, then she would fight anyway. And soon, she would learn that sometimes the smallest ally can change the fate of giants. The alien marketplace was loud, filled with strange lights and harsher voices. Stalls made of rusted metal and cloth leaned against one another, selling weapons, bones, and broken tech. Beasts in cages roared while slavers shouted their prices. Among all the noise, one sound cut through like a blade, a voice, calm, human, I said, "Let her go." The market froze. All eyes turned to the small figure standing in the center road. A man. A human. His skin carried dust from many worlds, his jacket torn and patched 100 times. His face was young, but his eyes were sharp, steady, and full of something most had forgotten in that place: courage. Before him stood 3 raiders, each twice his size. They laughed at him, their tusks showing as their heavy weapons glowed. Behind them, in the shadows of a cage, a wounded alien child stared with wide eyes. The human pointed at the cage. "The child leaves with me." The raiders roared with laughter. One leaned down, close enough that his hot breath washed over the human's face. "You? A tiny soft-worlder? You think you can bargain here?" The human's voice stayed calm. "No, I don't bargain. I promise." The market grew quiet. Not because the raiders were afraid, but because everyone wanted to see this foolish man die. The first raider swung his fist. The human ducked fast. He moved with the sharpness of a knife, his fist striking the raider's throat. The huge alien fell choking, smashing into a stall of rusted metal. The second raised a blaster, but before the shot could fire, the human's hand snapped forward, pressing a hidden charge against the weapon's side. The gun exploded in sparks, knocking the raider to the ground. The third, shocked, pulled out a blade, but the human stepped forward unafraid. His eyes locked with the raiders. "Try me." The blade shook. The raider lowered it. In silence, the human walked to the cage and pulled it open. He lifted the child gently, whispering in a voice soft enough only the child could hear. "You're safe now." The crowd watched as he carried the child through the market. No one stopped him, no one dared. Some whispered in disbelief. A human, standing against them? Madness. He won't last a week. Maybe he will. When the human vanished into the smoke-filled streets, the market slowly returned to its noise. But whispers spread. The story would travel far. That night, the human sat by a fire outside the city walls. The rescued child slept under a blanket beside him. His eyes looked upward, toward the stars. His voice was low, almost like a prayer. "They say she is too big. They say she is cursed. They say she is lost." He clenched his fist. "Then she will not fight alone. I will stand beside her." His promise was not for anyone in the camp to hear. But the stars seemed to carry it. Far away, the silent giantess, still hiding among the ruins of her broken world, felt a strange chill, a whisper on the wind. She did not understand it. Not yet. The next morning, the human gave the child to a safe caravan heading to another world. When asked why he risked his life, he only smiled. Because someone has to. Then he began his journey. He followed trails no one dared to walk, speaking with smugglers, soldiers, and broken wanderers. Each time he asked the same question: "Where is the giantess?" Most laughed at him. Some warned him to stop. Others gave false directions. But he never quit. On a frozen moon, he fought raiders for a clue. On a burning asteroid, he traded half his gear for a single map. Step by step, world by world, he got closer. And as he searched, danger followed him. Spies of the betrayers heard of him. Hunters were sent. Twice he was ambushed. Twice he survived, though barely. His enemies began to whisper a new name for him, the mad human. Yet still he walked forward. At last, on the edge of space where broken stars drifted like ghosts, he found a ruined beacon. A signal, faint but alive. He touched it and saw her face, giant, proud, and full of sorrow. The silent giantess. Her image flickered, but it was enough. He closed his eyes, whispering to the night, "Hold on. I'm coming." The journey ahead would be harder. The hunters were closer now, but the human's promise was stronger than fear. For in the darkness of the galaxy, one truth was being born. Sometimes the smallest voice carries the greatest weight. The cavern was silent, carved deep into the bones of a forgotten world. Broken crystals glowed faintly on the walls. giving off pale blue light. Dust drifted down from cracks above, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. In the center stood the noble woman, the silent giantess. Her massive frame filled the chamber, shoulders brushing against stone. She was still wounded from battles past, her silver skin scarred, her eyes heavy with pain. Yet she remained proud, standing tall like a broken tower refusing to fall. Then footsteps. Soft. Human. The sound echoed strangely in the cavern. The giantess turned her glowing eyes toward the entrance. A small figure appeared, carrying only a pack and a faint light in his hand. He looked impossibly small against her size. A human. For a long moment, they only stared at one another. She saw a fragile creature who should not have come this far. He saw a fallen queen, taller than any building, yet looking more alone than anyone he had ever met. Neither spoke. The silence pressed heavy. At last the human set down his pack and bowed his head. His voice was steady. "I came to stand beside you." The giantess frowned. "You are no soldier of mine. Why risk your life for me?" "Because," the human said, "your enemies want you forgotten, and I will not allow that." Her eyes narrowed, searching him for lies. But there was none. His words were plain, his courage real. Still, she did not answer. Then the silence broke. Shadows moved. A faint click echoed from the rocks above. A red dot of light crawled across the giantess's chest. A sniper. The human saw it first. His hand shot to his belt, pulling a small flash charge. He hurled it into the air. Light exploded across the cavern, blinding the hidden attackers. "Down!" he shouted. The giantess roared, throwing her arm upward. Stone shattered as a cloaked assassin fell from the ceiling. She crushed him under her hand. But more came, silent shapes slipping from cracks, blades gleaming. The human moved fast. He rolled behind a boulder, firing a stolen alien pistol. Beams of light struck true, dropping 2 attackers. Another leapt at him, but the giantess swept her massive arm across the floor, smashing the assassin into the wall. For the first time, they fought together. Her strength was unstoppable. His speed and cleverness filled the gaps she could not cover. The cavern shook with every blow, every shot, every scream of the dying. At last, silence returned. The bodies of the assassins lay scattered, their weapons glowing dim in the dust. The giantess breathed heavily, her chest rising and falling like storm waves. She looked at the human, this tiny fighter who had dared to save her. "You," she whispered, "you are smaller than my hand, and yet you fight like 10 warriors." The human wiped blood from his cheek. "And you," he said with a faint smile, "are bigger than a house, but you are not alone anymore." Her eyes softened. For the first time in many years, she felt something strange. Trust. They gathered supplies from the fallen assassins. The human checked the walls, searching for more spies. He knew someone had sent these killers. Someone close. Someone who feared the giantess might rise again. As they prepared to leave, the giantess paused. Her deep voice was low, almost like a confession. "My own people betrayed me. They called me cursed. They said my size brought only shame." She looked down at him, her face caught between sorrow and anger. "Why should you, a human, care for me?" The human met her gaze without fear. "Because size does not decide worth. You carry a heavy weight too big for you alone, but together," he tightened the strap on his pack, "we can carry it." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, slowly, she nodded. They moved deeper into the shadows of the cavern. Neither spoke much, but each step carried new meaning. No longer alone, no longer hunted without hope. Something unspoken had formed between them. But unseen in the cracks above, another pair of eyes watched. A spy cloaked in shadow slipped away quietly. He had seen everything. The bond between the giantess and the human was real, and that bond was dangerous. As the 2 allies walked deeper into the unknown, The spy whispered into his communicator. They are together now. Report to the betrayers. Far away in a throne room of iron and fire, enemies listened. A new plan was set. The giantess would not be allowed to rise, and the human who dared to stand beside her, he, too, would die. The shadows had only begun their game. The night was cold. Black mist crawled between jagged rocks as if the land itself breathed shadows. The giantess and the human moved carefully, their steps echoing through a canyon that stretched like the throat of some dead god. The human paused. He raised his hand, signaling silence. His eyes narrowed. The giantess tilted her head. What is it? He crouched low, pressing his ear to the ground. A faint vibration trembled through the stone. Steady, heavy, not natural. His voice was quiet, sharp. That's no storm. It's them. Before she could answer, a low hum filled the air. Strange lights flickered on the cliffs above, eyes of machines. Dozens of hunter drones awakened, their wings opening like knives. The trap had sprung. From the shadows came enemy soldiers, wrapped in armor that drank the light. Their weapons glowed like fireflies, aimed at the two who stood in the canyon's heart. The human gritted his teeth. They knew we'd come this way. The giantess growled, her deep voice shaking the rocks. Betrayers. They will taste my fury. The first drone screamed downward, its red beam cutting through the mist. The human pushed forward, dragging the giantess toward cover. A fallen stone arch. Energy bolts exploded around them, shaking dust from the cliffs. She crouched low. Though even crouching, her massive body barely fit behind the rocks. The human pulled a device from his pack, a tiny metal sphere. He twisted it and threw. It detonated mid-air, releasing a storm of bright flares. The drones shrieked, their sensors blinded, spinning wildly. The giantess stood, her massive arms swinging like a hammer. She struck one drone, then another, smashing them against the cliffs. Sparks rained like stars. But the soldiers pressed closer. Bolts of light hit her skin, burning but not stopping her. She roared, leaping forward. Her giant foot crushed three at once, her hand tearing another from the ground like a weed. Blood sprayed the stone. The human moved like fire, fast, sharp, unpredictable. He slid between shadows, his pistol snapping again and again. He fired into weak joints of the enemy armor, each shot finding its mark. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't bigger. But he was smarter. Yet still the numbers grew. For every drone they destroyed, two more appeared. For every soldier they cut down, more came from the dark. The canyon became a storm of fire and screams. The giantess bled now, thin lines of glowing blood sliding down her arm. The human's jacket was scorched, his breath heavy. Too many, she said. Then we outthink them, he answered. He looked up. The cliffs. Narrow. Fragile. Bring them closer to the walls, he shouted. Trust me. The giantess nodded once. With a roar, she charged forward, pretending to stumble, pretending to be weak. The enemy followed, hungry for the kill. The human sprinted along the canyon side, planting charges into cracks of the stone. His heart pounded. His hands shook. He had only seconds. Now! He yelled. The giantess slammed her fists into the cliff face with all her strength. The charges exploded. The walls cracked, then broke. The canyon roared as thousands of tons of rock collapsed. Drones screamed, soldiers shouted, but none escaped. Stone crushed metal, fire drowned voices. The ground shook like the end of the world. When the dust cleared, silence returned. Only broken wreckage remained. The giantess stood breathing heavily, her massive body covered in dust. She looked at the human who leaned against a boulder, coughing but alive. She spoke slowly. You planned this. You led them to their own graves. He smiled faintly. You're the strength. I'm the trick. Together, we survive. For a moment, there was peace. But then, movement. From the rubble crawled one survivor. Not a soldier, a commander. his armor black as night, his helmet marked with cruel symbols. He dragged himself forward, laughing. "You think you've won?" His voice was broken, but his eyes burned with hate. "This is only the beginning. She will never escape us. And you, little human, you will die screaming." The giantess lifted her hand, ready to crush him. But the human placed a hand on her arm. "No. Let him crawl back. Let him spread the truth. That we fight together now." The commander spat blood, glaring at them both before vanishing into the shadows. The giantess frowned. "You let him live." The human's eyes were hard. "Fear is a weapon too." As the night grew quiet again, they pressed onward. The canyon was behind them, but danger lay ahead. Both knew the betrayers would not stop. The enemy would send more, stronger, smarter. But something new had begun. The giantess no longer walked alone, and the human no longer fought in the shadows of giants. Together, they had turned the dark into a graveyard. And in the silence that followed, even the stars seemed to whisper, "The bond between them is growing, and the galaxy is beginning to notice." The desert night was silent. The stars stretched endless above, shining cold and bright. A lonely fire flickered at the edge of the dunes. Beside it sat the giantess. Her massive frame was hunched forward, arms resting on her knees, head bowed, low. The glow of the flames lit the scars on her silver skin. Her long hair fell around her face like a dark curtain. For once she looked less like a warrior, and more like a tired soul. The human sat across from her. His jacket was torn, his hands scraped from the battles in the canyon, yet his eyes stayed sharp, always watching the shadows, always listening for danger. For a long while, neither spoke. Only the fire crackled. Then the giantess whispered. Her deep voice trembled like the earth itself. "I carry a world on my shoulders, but it is too big for me." The human looked at her. She was larger than towers, her strength able to crush armies. Yet in that moment she looked smaller than the firelight, smaller than the silence between stars. Slowly, he rose and walked closer. He placed his hand against hers. His palm was no bigger than one of her fingers, yet he pressed it firmly. Then, "Let me carry it with you." Her glowing eyes widened. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Her people had mocked her. Her enemies had cursed her. But this human, so small, so fragile, spoke with no fear. Tears, bright and heavy, slipped from her eyes. They fell into the sand with the weight of stones. She turned her face away, ashamed. "Why would you share my burden? It is not yours." The human's voice was steady. "Because if you fall, the galaxy loses something it cannot replace." For the first time, the giantess did not argue. She only sat still, letting his words sink deep into her heart. The night grew colder. The human added more fuel to the fire. He glanced at her wounds. "You need rest. Tomorrow will be worse." She gave a bitter smile. "Worse?" He nodded. "Your betrayers want something. A relic. Something powerful enough to end more than just you." The giantess froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "You know," she said slowly. The human leaned closer. "I've heard the whispers. They say the relic sleeps in the ruins of your ancestors. They say it has power no one should touch. Is it true?" Her face darkened. "Yes. It is called the Heart of Worlds. My duty was to protect it. But when the invaders came, I failed. My people blamed me. They said I was unworthy." The firelight danced in her eyes. "If the relic wakes in the wrong hands, it will burn entire systems. Not just mine, yours as well." The human's jaw tightened. "Then we can't let them reach it." She shook her head. "You do not understand. The heart does not obey. It hungers, it consumes." She clenched her fists. "Even I fear it." The human was silent for a long time. Then he said softly, "Every weapon is dangerous. But so is giving up." If you still breathe, you still fight. Her gaze lingered, on him, searching for weakness. She found none. Finally, she nodded. Then we go together. The fire burned low. Both fell into uneasy silence, but their bond had changed. No longer just survival. Now it was purpose. As dawn painted the horizon red, they prepared to move. The giantess wrapped her wounds with cloth torn from fallen enemies. The human checked his pistol, his charges, his map. But before they could leave, the ground shook. The sand trembled as if something enormous moved beneath. Cracks split across the dunes. The giantess froze, her eyes widening in dread. No, she whispered. The human raised his weapon. What is it? Her voice was low, fearful. The heart has awakened. From the earth erupted pillars of black stone, glowing with ancient symbols. Energy poured from the cracks, twisting the air into storms of light. The dunes collapsed, revealing a hidden temple buried for centuries. The human shielded his eyes from the blazing glow. It's alive. The giantess's voice shook. The relic calls. It feels my blood. It feels my failure. As the temple opened, a terrible sound filled the desert, a pulse, a heartbeat, not of flesh but of power. The heart of worlds was no longer sleeping. The human's face hardened. Then we don't run from it. We face it. Together. The giantess stared at him, her fear battling against his courage. Slowly, she rose to her full height, towering over the desert. Her voice thundered like a storm. Then let us see if the heart can be tamed. The sand swallowed their footsteps as they walked toward the light. And in the distance, shadows moved. Betrayers and hunters marching closer, ready to claim the relic for themselves. The weight of worlds was no longer hidden. It was awake, and only the bond between a giantess and a human stood in its way. The desert temple groaned as if waking from 1,000 years of sleep. Black stone towers cracked and shifted, rising higher into the blood-red sky. Strange fire ran like rivers along the walls, glowing with symbols too old for any tongue to speak. At the heart of it all pulsed the relic. The heart of worlds. It was no jewel, no crown, no simple treasure. It was alive, a sphere of burning light floating above a throne of stone, its glow like a second sun. With every beat the ground shook. With every flash the air twisted into storms. The giantess stopped at the edge of the temple steps. Even her towering form seemed small compared to the force before her. Her voice, usually proud, was low with dread. This is no gift, she whispered. This is a curse. The human stepped beside her, his face pale in the unnatural glow. His jacket whipped in the storm of energy, yet his eyes stayed steady. Curse or not, your enemies want it. We stop them here or the galaxy burns. Before she could answer, the temple floor cracked. From the stone rose shapes of fire and iron. Guardians. Machines built in the age of the ancestors, each one taller than ships, their bodies made of molten metal and armor of black stone. Their eyes flared like burning suns as they stepped forward. The giantess gripped her fists. The trial has begun. The first guardian struck. Its arm, long as a tower, swept across the temple like a storm. The giantess raised both arms, blocking the blow. The impact shook the desert, throwing sand into the sky. She groaned under the force, her knees sinking into the stone, but she did not fall. The human ran, slipping between the giant's legs. He planted a charge against the guardian's knee joint and dove aside. The explosion shook the machine, making it stumble. Now! He shouted. The giantess roared, pushing upward. With a mighty heave, she twisted the guardian's arm and hurled it onto its back. The ground cracked under its weight. But there were more. Two guardians marched from the shadows, their steps like drums of war. Fire burst from their mouths, sweeping across the temple in waves. The human rolled behind a broken pillar as flames licked at the stone. The giantess shielded him with her body, her skin glowing red from the heat. "Go," she commanded Dot. But he refused. "Not without you." Together they fought Dot. She grabbed one guardian by the neck, slamming its head into the ground. Sparks burst like stars. The other raised a burning blade the size of a tower. It swung down, aiming for her chest. Dot. The human leapt onto the guardian's arm, climbing fast, his hands burning against the molten surface. He reached its shoulder, pulled out his last charge, and slammed it into the glowing eye. Dot. The explosion blinded the beast. It stumbled, swinging wildly. The giantess seized the chance, tackling it backward into the temple wall. The stone shattered. The guardian fell silent. Dot. But the last one still stood. Stronger, faster. Its fire burned hotter, its strikes sharper. Dot. The giantess was tiring, her massive body bleeding light. The human's charges were gone, his pistol nearly empty. They stood side by side, both breathing heavy. Dot. The guardian raised its arms, ready to crush them both. Dot. The human looked up at her. "Together." She nodded. Dot. He ran forward first, distracting the beast, dodging under its blows. He was small, quick, hard to catch. The guardian followed him, lowering itself just enough. Dot. The giantess charged. With all her strength, she leapt, her body slamming into the guardian's chest. Stone cracked, fire burst, the ground split open. She drove it backward, pushing it toward the relic's throne. "Now, human," she roared. Dot. The man climbed onto the fallen guardian, finding its core glowing bright. With his last strength, he tore open the casing and stabbed his blade deep inside. The core screamed like a dying star. Dot. The guardian convulsed, then collapsed. In silence. Dot. The temple grew quiet. Only the relic still pulsed. Faster now, brighter, as if it had fed on the battle. Dot. The human fell to his knees, coughing. The giantess leaned against the stone, her body trembling. Dot. She looked at him, her voice hoarse. "You are smaller than dust. Yet you faced the trial as if you were my equal." He forced a smile. "Maybe not equal, but together, strong enough." Her eyes softened. For the first time, she lowered her head in respect. Perhaps humans are not so small after all. But their moment of peace did not last. Dot. From beyond the temple, horns blared. Shadows stretched across the desert. An army marched, countless soldiers carrying banners of betrayal. And at their front rode the one who had abandoned her, the brother who stole her throne. Dot. The giantess clenched her fists. The human rose, weapon in hand. Dot. The trial of fire was over. But the war for the heart of worlds had only begun. The desert shook beneath the march of an army. Thousands of soldiers poured across the sands, their banners dark against the red dawn. Machines rolled beside them, cannons glowing, drones circling like vultures. At their head rode a tall figure, in black armor, his crown forged from steel and fire. Dot. The giantess knew him well. Dot. Her brother. Dot. Once her blood, once her ally, now the betrayer who had stolen her throne. His voice thundered across the battlefield, carried by speakers mounted on his machines. "Surrender, sister. The heart belongs to me. You and your human pet will be nothing but dust." The giantess stood tall at the temple gates, her silver skin glowing in the rising sun. At her side stood the human, his jacket torn, his pistol low on charge. They were broken, bleeding, but unbroken in spirit. Dot. She looked down at him. For once, there was no pride in her voice, only truth. "Too big for me, but I'll try." The human's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then I'll try too." The horns sounded. The army charged. Dot. The first wave came like a storm. Soldiers rushed forward, weapons blazing. The human darted into the shadows, firing quick shots, each one finding a weak spot in enemy armor. The giantess roared, swinging her massive arm, knocking soldiers aside like leaves in a wind. Dot. But the enemy did not stop. Dot. Cannons fired. Drones screamed from above. Explosions rocked the temple steps. The human threw himself over fallen stone, rolling to avoid fire. The giantess shielded him with her body, taking the blasts against her skin. Dot. She staggered but did not fall. "Together," he shouted. Dot. She slammed her fists into the ground. The temple shook, cracks spreading through the stone. Enemy machines lost their footing, tumbling into pits of fire. Dot. The humans sprinted across the battlefield, planting charges on war cannons, blasting them apart. Sparks and smoke filled the air. The army wavered but pressed on, endless in number. Dot. Then came the brother. Dot. He dismounted from his black machine, his steps heavy, his crown glinting in the firelight. His armor was carved with ancient symbols of power. In his hand he carried a blade of living flame. "Little sister," he said coldly, "you were always too soft, too weak. You could not protect your people. You could not guard the heart. You are a failure." The giantess's voice shook the desert. "I may have failed once, but I am not alone now." Her brother's gaze turned to the human. He laughed, cruel and loud. "This tiny insect? This is who you trust? He will die before my first strike." The human raised his pistol. "Try me." The duel began. Dot. The brother swung his burning blade. The giantess blocked with her arm, sparks exploding from the clash. She pushed him back with a roar, but he was strong, stronger than any foe she had faced. Dot. While giants clashed, the human fought soldiers closing in, moving fast, never still. He knew he could not match their size, so he used their weakness against them: speed, shadows, and fire from stolen weapons. Dot. But the brother was ruthless. Blow by blow, he forced the giantess back toward the relic's throne. His blade cut into her shoulder, spilling glowing blood across the stone. She groaned, knees trembling. "Too big for you," he taunted. "You cannot win." The human heard those words. His chest burned with fury. He climbed the broken steps, leaping onto the brother's back. His blade struck between the plates of black armor. Sparks flew. Dot. The brother roared, hurling him aside. The human crashed hard, coughing blood, but he rose again. His voice cut through the chaos. "Too big for her, but not for us." The giantess's eyes blazed. Strength surged through her. With a roar that shook the heavens, she grabbed her brother's arm, twisting the flaming blade aside. With her other hand, she struck his chest, shattering the armor. Dot. The human ran forward, planting his last charge into the crack. Together they shouted, "Now!" The explosion ripped through the betrayer's chest. He fell backward, the flame of his blade dying in the sand. His crown rolled away, lost in the dust. Dot. Silence fell. The army froze, their leader defeated. Slowly, one by one, weapons dropped. Drones powered down. The battlefield grew still. Dot. The giantess stood tall, bloodied but unbroken. She looked down at the human who leaned on his weapon, barely standing. "You carried the weight with me," she whispered. Dot. He smiled weakly. "We carried it together." The heart of worlds pulsed behind them, still glowing, still dangerous. But now it was guarded not by fear but by trust. Dot. The giantess raised her head to the sky. For the first time in her life, she felt no shame, no curse. She was no longer the silent giantess. She was a protector. Dot. And by her side stood a human who had proven that sometimes the smallest ally can help lift the heaviest burden. Dot. The dawn spread golden light across the desert. A new day had come. Dot. The war was not over. The galaxy would bring more battles, more trials. But together, they had shown a truth no army could deny. Even the biggest battles can be won when someone dares to say, "I'm too big for me." But I'll try.